Hello, everyone, and welcome back to She Makes It Work. Today, we're talking about 3 things successful leaders do. And these are all things that you can start doing today, and they're really going to help you in your career. So, the first thing successful leaders do is they get their names on things. And it can be easy to say, oh, they get their names on things because they're leaders. And so people want them to be participating in things. And that's an easy fallacy to sink into. Most of these leaders actually got there because they were able to successfully get their names on things. And let's talk about what kinds of things matter. The first thing is articles. So, if you have any interest or ability to write articles at all, you should definitely be leaning into any sort of like creativity program that your company might offer. So, many companies are trying to produce content that differentiates themselves, and they're looking for people who can help write things that are going to increase the company's brand as well. And I'm not talking about marketing things, I'm talking about whatever the business of your company is. They want their employees to be contributing to intellectual content around that business and around what they're doing, not things that just come from marketing, because those sound like they come from marketing, not, strike against marketing. But a lot of times companies want people who actually work at the company doing whatever the core business is to be creating content about that. So you can do that by starting to write things on your own and then showing them to your leadership. Or again, most companies have some sort of program where they are having blogs that they write. A lot of companies have started actually doing podcasts about what they do, and they also want people who can contribute to company LinkedIn posts. So, my company that I was recently at, every few years we started up a new initiative and it was called Different Things. But if you're interested in getting your name on things, definitely talk to your boss and ask your boss, what opportunities are there for me to contribute to some content pieces, because I'm really interested in what we do and I really want to be able to talk about it. And when you show enthusiasm for that, usually your leadership, your mentors, they're going to help you find those opportunities. And one that you can start doing on your own in terms of getting your name on things is actually writing LinkedIn posts. And so a lot of companies love it when their employees are posting really positive things about what's happening in their company or what's happening in their industry on LinkedIn. And obviously you have to respect, confidentiality, so be a little bit cautious about that. But within the bounds of confidentiality, if you're really passionate about something that's happening with your company or in the industry or anything that's going on related to work, definitely post about it on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and just make sure, again, that you are following any company guidelines about that. But it's a really good way to get your name out there. And what happens is that a lot of leaders are really frequently looking on LinkedIn and they see posts by people, and that actually really impresses them. And so that's getting your name out there. That's getting your name more and more recognized. And another really good way to get your name out there is obviously attaching yourself to successful projects. And so making sure that you're on the projects that are like really juicy. So sometimes there's like an ebb and flow about which types of work are more or less popular in different industries. And so in consulting, sometimes they might be leaning hard into public sector projects, or right now everybody's leaning really hard into AI. And it's not necessarily about doing what's trendy, but it is about getting your name attached to what has leadership's attention, because that's going to then get your name out there and get their attention as well. So definitely look for what the emerging trends are in your industry and get your name attached to projects that are going to be huge. Another example is Data Cloud was really big in the Salesforce world. And so getting your name on some of the first Data Cloud projects really can elevate your visibility within your company and get your name out there, which can then lead to opportunities to contribute to articles about it and increase your visibility and increase your name reach. And the third, kind of related to projects, but more specifically, is if your company does any kind of sales, like client sales or anything like that, getting your name attached to a project that's selling really well increases your visibility and then creates more opportunities for you to help with sales. And so, since obviously sales drives revenue, sometimes that is actually a more enticing thing to leadership to see people who can sell really well, even more so than delivery quality. And that's a harsh truth, because the sales cycle is shorter than the delivery cycle. And sometimes, I'm going to say, as a delivery person, the delivery cycle can be a lot harder. But because sale is that entry point, sometimes getting your name on projects that sell well is actually more valuable to your company than being the person that delivers them. I'm not saying you need to move into a sales role, but a lot of times, depending on how your company's structured, if there are sales opportunities, you can start joining sales teams and at least participate in them. And that will start increasing your visibility, and you're kind of seen as somebody who's trying to, frankly, grow the business of your company. And obviously, that's really attractive to leadership. So that's the first tip is just get your name on more and more things. And that is going to increase your exposure to your leadership. And then you will be invited to more and more things as well. The second thing successful leaders do is reflect back on every week. And some people may not do this weekly, they may do it monthly, but I'm going to suggest starting at weekly and then you can scale it back once you get more used to it. I'm also going to say that when you start doing this, it's going to be a little bit more of an effort at first while you build that muscle. But when you're used to doing this reflection, it's like second nature and you can do it quite a bit more casually. So by the time people are in more senior leadership roles, they do this sometimes a little bit more informally, but some of them still actually maintain this as a formal practice. So having said that, let me describe it to you what that means, reflecting back on your week. So just like if you do project work, you might be used to doing sprint retros or project retros. Well, when it comes to your own professional development, doesn't it make sense that that same practice can help your professional development as well, your individual professional development? So what I like to do, and we all know that I'm into journaling and so is Abby. What I like to do is I like to take my journal and either on Friday or Sunday, I have time set aside and it kind of depends on how the week goes and how much time I need to process it before I journal about it. But I set aside time and I reflect back on the previous week and I really think about what were my wins? What were my successes? What went well? And then I think what didn't go so well and what can I learn from that? Also think about the things that you had to do that were just normal. They weren't wins, they weren't successes, but they're part of keeping your job running and reflect on those things and really ask yourself honestly, like, did I spend enough time on them? Did I spend too much time on them? What can I do to increase the efficiency of that? The whole point of this reflection is to be learning constantly about yourself and how you work and what works for you. And then if something is a recurring issue, that happens to us sometimes, right? If it's a recurring issue and if you're journaling about it weekly, you can actually look back on that trend and see for yourself if you're improving on the thing that needs to be improved on. This may sound like a lot and it may sound a little bit nerdy, but I'm telling you, when you're really passionate about your own development and growing your career, doing the nerdy things and investing in yourself is huge. It matters so much. And leaders improve and grow and get better because they are aware of their performance and they take control of their performance by monitoring their performance. So you can also take this in a deeper direction and kind of ask yourself how you're doing emotionally as well. So if you look back on your week and you look at your wins and you look at your challenges and you can see patterns across time if you're documenting your journal, and you can also check in with yourself and just say, how am I doing? Am I happy? Am I doing the right things? And that's a really important self reflection as well, because A, it's really easy to get in the weeds at work. We all know that. And it's also really easy to just continue doing what we're used to doing. Whereas sometimes it's time for a change. And you may not know that if you're just too in the day to day. And so taking that step back, I always call it taking a step back and taking a step up and doing self reflection and really checking in with yourself helps you learn more about you as a human, not just you as a person who's working. So again, I tell this tip to my friends all the time, and I have to admit, a lot of times they roll their eyes at me, but I'm really hoping our She Makes It Work audience is really invested in themselves and is willing to take the time to do this, because one of the biggest things about growth is self-awareness. And we talk about that a lot, which is you have to know and observe what's going on in order to then influence and change it. And one of the best ways that you can do that is by reflecting it and documenting it. So again, celebrate your wins. That's an important part of it. You're writing down your wins and successes. Celebrate your wins. Learn about yourself and what made those wins, and then look at your challenges honestly. And again, if you're having some recurring challenges, that's a great opportunity to reflect on what do you need to do differently, or do you need to get some outside help? Do you need to get a coach? Do you need to lean on your mentor? Do you need to talk to your boss and just ask for help there if you guys have that kind of relationship? I know not everybody does, but again, you can't do that if you're not reflecting back on it. And just like you would with your projects and with your teams, it's important to do that with yourself. The third one might sound easy at first and then be controversial when you think about it, but the third thing successful leaders do is they take time for themselves. And I know that this is a hard driving world and we all work really hard, and some of you may be having this reaction of, Gabby, I already do that, or Gabby, I can't do that. But I want you to pause for a second and hear me out, because I'm talking about taking time for yourself so that you have emotional and intellectual room for yourself. Because what happens is everybody gets so bogged down in the day to day, and that's the day to day of the job and childcare and taking care of your home, and literally feeding yourself can seem super hard sometimes. I get it. But I'm going to challenge you to realize that you're a better person when you do have a little bit of room for yourself to reflect and to learn. So, we talked a little bit about the practice of self reflection, but this is where I'm saying actually take time for yourself that's a few hours a week where you can do some of that inner work. And I'm going to be very transparent here and say I haven't worked Friday afternoons in like 13 years. And so I know that summer Fridays are becoming more and more popular in a lot of companies, but I've been doing summer Fridays every season for 13 years. And the reason I do that is because A, by the time I get to midday on Friday, I've usually already worked a full week, like well over 45, 50 hours. And so I know I've put the time in. But when you are developing yourself, it's not always about putting the time in. It's about showing up well and with quality and with being a whole person and with being able to take a little bit of room to just really process and think about everything. So that time can be spent partially on the self-reflection exercise I'm talking about, but it actually doesn't even have to. You can do both. You can take time during the week to just have some room to breathe and exist, and then also set aside time to do reflection, or you can combine them. So I know I just mentioned Friday afternoons. I know that's not feasible for everybody, but I do really think that this habit of overscheduling ourselves and having too many meetings is just genuinely unhealthy. And some of you aren't in roles where you can completely control your schedule, and I totally understand and respect that. But some of you are, and some of you are in roles where you can actually influence this for other people as well. I get really frustrated, to be honest, when I see leaders insisting on Friday meetings at like 4 or 5 local time. I'm like, why would you do that to people? Like, everybody's spent by the end of the week. They're not doing their best work. They're thinking about the weekend, or at least I hope they're thinking about the weekend. And, we're just exhausted by the end of the week. I just think that that's not cool, to be honest. So, if you're in any way a leader, whether that's a project manager or a business unit leader or whatever role you're in, and you have the ability to influence the schedule of the people around you, I'm going to say, hey, give people a break. Don't schedule things. I don't schedule things after, honestly, about 1 on Friday, but everybody knows I have it blocked off on my calendar that after 2, I'm not taking meetings. And I might still like check emails and answer Slack and Teams, because for me individually, like as a person, that doesn't take more than like 5 to 10% of my attention. So I can happily be doing something else and do those things. For some people, even that is an intrusion on this like kind of separate time. So just, if that's not you, that's fine. Just book it. And it doesn't have to be Friday afternoon. Like I was saying, like that may not be feasible for everybody. You might be, on a project team where you guys are doing weekend releases or whatever. Like I totally understand that. But in that case, look at like Wednesday afternoon, or look at, some morning, or one morning a week, you get a later start. But whatever it is, figure out what works for your schedule and your workflow, and just genuinely ask yourself if things can move around and shift without impacting other people too negatively. But you should be able to find some time that's just for you. And I suggest going for a walk, or if you're a golfer, just whatever you can do that has some semblance of either solitude or constructive time with friends. And I say constructive time because I don't just mean like, venting or just going out and drinking and completely like context switching. I just mean some sort of like interim time that's not really working, but it's not really doing something else. Like the point isn't to overschedule that time. That point is to have a little bit of mental downtime for a few hours. And even the process of figuring out what you want to do at that time is probably a first step in some important self-discovery. So these are 3 things successful leaders do. I've worked with a lot of leaders at a lot of different companies, that I've noticed the ones who really take themselves and their careers seriously do all of these things. So again, I'm just going to recap. 1 is getting your name on things. You want to raise your visibility and your credibility in your brand, and getting your names on things is a huge way to do that. The second one is reflecting back every week or every month, but I really do suggest doing it weekly, and just doing a check-in, seeing what worked and what didn't, and learning from it, but also tracking that over time. So really good if you do write that down. And the third one is taking time for yourself regularly. I'm saying weekly. It may be a different cadence for you, but I genuinely think that the way our brains work, having a weekly, just a little bit of space is very healing, very helpful, and can only help make your life better. So I hope this was helpful, and please tell me if you try these things and how they go for you. And if you want to hear more tips about what successful leaders do, let me know. This is She Makes It Work. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.